All right, there's a very high likelihood that you clicked on this video because you saw a thumbnail of Think and Grow Rich with a big X through it. And you're probably coming over here with your pitchfork and your fire, and you're like, let's lynch him. That guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But I'm telling you, if you want to learn how to think like the 1%, I want you to put that book aside for a second. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm not saying it's not a classic. I'm not saying you shouldn't read it. However, I'm saying that the author of Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, actually wrote an even better book. It is Outwitting the Devil. And I think you should read this book. I just finished this book. I've read Think and Grow Rich like 15 times, right? It's a book that I come back to annually. It's a book that I've gone very in depth in the previous podcast episodes. I think it's very important because how the 1% think is fundamentally different than how 99% of the population thinks. And it's not their fault. I mean, in fairness, we were taught in school very particular ways to think. We were taught to conform. We were taught to regurgitate. We were taught to memorize. We were taught to sit still, face forward, raise your hand when you had a question, right? Do what you're told, punch the clock, show up, all that stuff. But if you want to be successful in life, that will not work. You are punished in life for the things you are rewarded for in school. So you have to rewire how you think about the world. And I think Think and Grow Rich is a fantastic primer for that for most people. But Outwitting the Devil, I'm going to say that I think this book is even better. And I was so incredibly surprised by that because I put Think and Grow Rich on a very high pedestal. But Outwitting the Devil, I'm putting it higher for a couple of reasons. And I'm going to unpack some of the lessons from this book that you can immediately take and apply to your life to think like the 1%. But the reason I think this book is so damn good is the form, the way it was written. It's written as an interview with the devil. Now, I'm not talking about some Christian version of the devil. Very early in the book, he outlines exactly who this devil is and what does he mean by that. And it's very interesting, very creatively well done. It's a very interesting parabolized form of transferring knowledge. And so it's a very enjoyable read. And it's very wild. I can't describe it in any other way than just wild. Whereas Think and Grow Rich is very much more prescriptive. Now, in this, the devil, the very first thing is to realize that the juxtaposition between God and devil in this book is not based off of any kind of spiritual, religious version of God and the devil, but merely the positive and the negative energies of the universe, the yin and the yang, or rather what we would describe as positive and negative. Because one of the recurring themes in this book, and I think I'll just jump straight to this, is nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. I think that was Shakespeare who said that. And one of the lessons in here is this idea of learning from adversity, how failure is a man-made construct. The idea of failure, this is really fascinating if you stop to think about it. So I want you to think about what was the greatest failure that you consider in your life. It might be a breakup. It might be a business going to zero. It might be, a moment where you didn't show up in the way that you wanted to. You label that as a failure. But in the natural world, the universe does not recognize that as a failure. It's nothing. It's just an event. And it's inside of your mind that you've created the narrative that was a failure rather than, ostensibly a success. And yet, because it occurs inside your mind, it is an entirely man-made subjective experience. You could also relabel that however you want it to. You could call it a success. You don't have to call it a failure. You could just call it an experiment. You could call it a failed experiment, even if you wanted to, right? But you get to call it whatever you want, and it's not an objective failure. It's merely your perspective and your labeling of it as a failure. Now, from that adversity, that challenge, that obstacle, that is standing between you and your desired end state, there is, as Napoleon Hill points out in this book, the seed of equivalent advantage. So in every adversity, there is the seed of equivalent advantage. It might not be a big seed. It's not a full-grown oak tree of advantage. It's a tiny seed. So in every struggle, obstacle that you encounter in your life, and that breakup that you had, the business that went to zero, and that failure that you had, there is a seed of opportunity for you to learn, to grow, and to apply in the future. It's your job to find what that seed is, plant it in the soil and then nurture it. And if you do that, you will be thinking like the 1%, which is Every successful person I've had the pleasure of interacting with has this mindset that whether something is an opportunity or obstacle is merely a matter of their perspective. And that from the things that don't go how they anticipated they would, those things that you might label as a failure, they look at that and they say, cool, that's another data point. And they understand that failure is the most data-rich set in the universe. And from failures, we can learn so much more than we do than our successes, because when you shoot the basketball and it goes in the hoop on the first try, you don't stop to reassess, did you shoot the ball well? You don't think like, was my form correct? Did I jump? Did I do all the little things? You just look at it and you judge it based off the outcome, and you say the ball went in the hoop, therefore it was a good shot. And yet, was it? Is that going to help you make the next shot or the shot after that? Is that going to help you improve? Unlikely. It's when the ball doesn't go in that you then have an opportunity to reflect and you say, what went wrong? Did I not follow through? Did I not jump correctly? Did I not extend all the way through? Whatever, right? It's when the ball doesn't do what you expected or what you wanted it to do that then you go and you reassess and say, what could I do differently next time to ensure I get the desired result? That is a positive thing. So, in fact, in a lot of ways, I think it's detrimental to be met with success early in your business journey. And I've shared about this, how I got really lucky in my very first business of window washing. We built that to 7 figures within 12 months. And I thought I was hot shit. I thought I knew everything there was to know about business. And then, fast forward a couple of years, I got into another business opportunity with my buddies who they were struggling. I was overly confident that I could come in there and fix the thing. And I got my ass handed to me. And it was because I happened to make the first basket, and I never stopped to have to reassess the form or anything else. And then I got my ass kicked when I went up against better players, let's say. And they're like, nope, swat that ball out of here. You get out of here, white boy. So that's one of the very first ideas from this book of Outwitting the Devil that I want to share with you. And then the second one is the number one reason that 99% of people are not where they want to be in life is something that Napoleon refers to as drifting. They are drifters. Drifting is the devil's tool, the number one tool the devil uses in this example to pull people into his clutches. What does it mean to drift, though? So to drift is to go through life without a definiteness of purpose. I would change that, because definiteness of purpose is definiteness is a really weird word. I would just say intention. Most people are not going through life with intention, not just in the moment applying intention, but applying intention to the overall arc of their life. They don't have an outcome in their mind clearly formulated, a target at which they are directing their life's efforts. And without that target in mind, you are going to drift. You are going to spew your arrows in all directions and be happy to hit whatever you hit. Think about that. Think about how many people you can just see it on the street. You can see them in the way that they drive to work. You can see it in the way that they show up, in the way that they talk, and the way that they're living just for the weekend so that they can punch out, they can go home, they can have a couple days to themselves to party, to relax, to unwind, and then have to come back to the grind and do it all again on Monday. They are going through life with no intention. There's no target they're trying to hit, and therefore they're just adrift. And the devil likes that. The devil likes that because the idle hands are the devil's playthings. He can sow all sorts of seeds of dissent, of fear, of overwhelm, of depression in the mind of the person who has no clear intention towards what they're running towards. If you go through life without purpose, man, I can't think of a worse feeling than, and maybe you've experienced this, like if you went through a business failure, this is a perfect example. If you've ever gone through the loss of a loved one, you've gone through that mourning, that grieving period of loss, and you wonder, what's the purpose? What am I even doing here anymore? That's why I think breakups hurt so much. It's because you tie so much of your personal identity into the other person. You become one. And now when that splits off, you're asking yourself, who am I? I'm not whole. What is my purpose? And I think that's why it's so painful to go through those really traumatic experiences. It's because you lose your rudder. You lose your sense of what's the meaning of this thing that I'm doing in life. Now, let's extrapolate that out, because I think most people, even without the traumatic events, they still are going through life rudderless without a deeper meaning, deeper purpose. And as a result, they don't get what they want. because they don't even know what they want. They just get what the universe gives them. That is fundamentally one of the biggest differences between the 1% and the 99%. Is the 1%, the successful people, the people that we emulate, look up to, we want to be like, or the greatest versions of ourselves that we want to manifest. They have a definiteness of purpose. They know exactly what they want to get out of life, and they are moving towards it relentlessly. They are not drifting. All right. Another idea from this book is the idea of harmony. The idea of harmony, how when our actions are in alignment with the intention, with the purpose, with the definiteness of purpose that we have for our life, then we realize that in the form of speed and power. Think about like an engine on a car. When it's out of alignment, the pistons are firing out of time. There's wasted motion. Things are fighting themselves. There's internal friction. The power isn't getting transferred to the wheels as seamlessly as it possibly could, right? When we get those pieces to fire in unison, in the correct order, and in harmony, all of that power gets directly transferred to the wheels, and we get more speed, we get more torque. It's the same thing in your life. If you feel like you're constantly hitching and that you're putting in all this effort and yet it feels like a weird struggle, you're not getting the results that you want, it's probably because you're not acting in harmony. The activities that you're executing on a daily basis are not in harmony with the goal, with the intention that you've set, the bigger purpose for your life. And this is so ubiquitous, how we will wake up and you will create a long to-do list of things that need to get done. And yet when you really look at them, most of that is just watering fake plants. Most of it is just going through the motions, doing things with excellence that shouldn't even be done at all. You're wasting energy to just go through the motions of life and check to-do lists without really asking yourself, is this in alignment with the big intention, the big goal, the thing that I want to accomplish in my life? And the reason it's often not in alignment is because the things that will move you towards your goals, they are hard by definition. They are instinctively difficult because all great things require sacrifice. They require effort. And yet, if you are not willing to sacrifice in the moment to achieve great things, the great things that you could have in this life will become the sacrifice. If you do not sacrifice now for your dreams become the sacrifice. And that might be the biggest difference in how the 1% think versus the 99%. So I'm curious, of these ideas, which one resonates the most deeply with you? Which one have you struggled with historically? Put it down in the comments. I'd love to hear with you guys. I read every single comment. I say hello when I can. I would love to say hi to you. So do that. I'll see you guys in the next video.